I'm never having kids. All my Gen Z friends agree we won't be parents in a world like this.
Hi, I'm the girl with the list, and this is your sign to get off that fence and take your birth control. Because the grass is not greener on her side of the fence.
Okay, here's my hot take, so don't come at me. But for the most part, motherhood is deeply unsatisfying.
All of my friends who have kids are in hell. I actually don't know anyone who's like happy and has children.
Gen Z is not trying to have kids, but the government is shaking in their boots because we don't want children.
The U.S. government is panicking because the birth rate is falling, which means that GDP could be falling, which means that billionaires could make less money.
The birth rate is very low. Unless that changes, civilization will disappear.
3/4 of countries won't have high enough fertility rates to keep their population size growing over time.
And now you no longer have children. You no longer have a replacement generation at all.
The White House is floating ideas for how to change that. One proposal includes a $5,000 so-called baby bonus.
See, but the thing is, motherhood is a scam.
Birth rates have been slowly declining for decades now, but Gen Z is sealing the deal as nearly 30% say that they don't have and don't want children. And honestly, who can blame them? Because modern motherhood looks like nothing more than a high-stress, underpaid job with no benefits other than fulfilling a milestone that society says we need to accomplish. But now, politicians around the world are panicking because no babies means no future workers and economic chaos. So in a desperate attempt to try and kickstart another baby boom, we're being offered genius ideas like a $5,000 baby bonus and a National Medal of Motherhood awarded to women who have 6 kids or more. But is a government-funded push present really all it would take to get Gen Z back on the baby train? And if having children is supposedly crucial to the survival of a nation, then why have women been continuously left behind and forgotten up until this point? Well, that's what we're going to talk about today, why Gen Z is walking away from parenthood, and who is to blame for our looming population collapse. It feels like just in the past few years, people have come to realize that there's a problem with the rate of reproduction and are frantically trying to fix it. Contrary to the narrative that many of us grew up with, that the world was on track for overpopulation and resource depletion, things have completely flipped. Suddenly, overpopulation isn't the crisis. Underpopulation is. I actually made one of my first half attempts at a video essay back in 2020 about the problem of overpopulation, and that's when I learned that we don't actually have an overpopulation problem. Feel free to go back and check that one out. It's funny to see how much my essays have changed. But countries began to shift their thinking from overpopulation concerns to low birth rate anxieties, primarily in the 2010s, with Japan's shrinking elderly population being one of the early signs. Since then, many countries have scrambled to revive their population growth, including China abolishing its one-child policy in 2016, which was originally in place for 35 years to minimize the overpopulation concerns. But even when the law was abolished, they found themselves SOL because women still weren't having children. Among the estimated more than 11 million couples who were eligible to have a second child under the new rule, only 1.69 million had applied as of August 2015, accounting for 15.4% of such couples. And since then, declining birth rates have gained global attention, specifically in the 2020s, as trends became too impossible to ignore.
This map should be a wake-up call. The people in the orangish countries aren't replacing themselves. They have sub-replacement birth rates. You probably already saw it on the map, but there is only one region in the globe that will have net population growth. 6 countries are going to be responsible for over half of all global population growth by the end of the century. 5 of those are in Africa. It's hard to exaggerate just how much that's going to scramble the geopolitical landscape by the end of the century.
And the reason this is a problem, so they say, is because we need to maintain population replacement levels to sustain economies, because we need to replace jobs, we need to pay for retirees, we need whatever else the economists say we need. So what is going on with women and why don't they want kids? For a lot of them, the modern ideal life just doesn't include children, and that mindset shift has been building for a long time. Ever since the women's revolution in the 70s, when women fought for autonomy beyond motherhood, it opened up the door of imagining life outside of having kids. As said here, they want to cut the apron strings that confine mothers to unpaid domestic servitude at home. And since then, birth rates started their slow decline. In 2022, for the 7th year in a row, the birth rate among US women in their early 30s was higher than the rate among those in their late 20s. Perhaps even more notably, the number of babies born to women 40 and older, while still low overall, rose considerably from 2021 to 2022, up 6% among women ages 40 to 44 and 12% among those older than 45. And by the time we hit 2023, the US recorded its lowest birth rate in 40 years. And there are multiple reasons for this. Not that women ever need to give a reason as to why they don't want to have children, but it's still helpful for us to know why. So many women say that it's because they want to prioritize their careers, they value personal freedom, they worry about bringing children into an unstable world, or they feel financially limited. But as of recent, women were surveyed, and it was found that the top reason that they don't want children, in true stick it to the man fashion, was simply because they don't want them.
I mean, what if I don't want to live the way you live?
Oh, don't be ridiculous, Andrea. Everybody wants this.
In July 2024, a Pew Research Center survey looking at American adults found that 57% of those who say they're unlikely to ever have kids report the main reason being they just don't want to. Andrea Williams, a woman in her 20s, gave her experience with choosing to go child-free and said that at first it was unfathomable not to have children. But the more I thought about it, I actually couldn't come up with a reason why I wanted them other than I just thought that that was what I was supposed to do. I also want to note here before moving into some of the solutions to this problem, I don't endorse pressuring women into feeling that they need to have children. I'm just all for building a system that supports women who do want kids to feel that they're actually capable of doing so. But to dive deeper into why women just straight up don't want kids or find themselves being one and done, research has consistently shown that motherhood is just not very appealing and is definitely less appealing than fatherhood. So I just turned 30 last month. Yikes. But I actually do feel really good about it. I'm excited for a new decade. And also last year, I started a skincare routine to help maintain the health of my skin and feel my age. And by far, my favorite products have been from Typology, who is today's sponsor. So I've been using Typology pretty much since I started my skincare journey. And the reason I love them is because they use naturally derived ingredients and they use aluminum and glass packaging. I've been really conscious about the packaging of my skincare because the plastic from bottles can actually leach into your products and then you're putting that on your face. And we don't need any more endocrine disruptors in our life. So I really appreciate the glass and plastic packaging. And as for their ingredients, all of their products are made in France. And so they have to follow the European regulations, which are much stricter than the US. So you know you're getting the best ingredients. One of the first products I used was their 9-ingredient moisturizer, which as you can guess has only 9 naturally derived ingredients and comes in a metal tube. But since then I've expanded to more of their products from their tinted line. I love these because they're actually hybrid products, which means that they give you the long-term benefits of skincare with active ingredients, but they also just look really good on. The tinted serum is 99% naturally derived and includes vitamin C, squalane, and aloe vera. Their concealer is 97% naturally derived and includes caffeine and niacinamide, which helps reduce the appearance of redness, puffiness, and dark circles. And I have been loving their lip oils. I am currently wearing this one in black cherry, and these have squalane, jojoba oil, and vitamin E. I love the lip oils because they're really lightweight, they're not sticky, and they give just a light color to your lips, nothing too bold. So if you're interested, Typology has an exclusive offer for you. If you click the link in the description, you can receive a free shimmering dry oil with vitamin C and 5 organic botanical oils with the purchase of $40. And that offer is only available for 1 week, so if you're interested, hop on it. It always comes down to the patriarchy, doesn't it? Because as it turns out, the decades and decades of women being left behind in the home to carry the entirety of the mental and emotional load of parenthood hasn't boded well for birth rates. This version of motherhood, labeled patriarchal motherhood, is one of a system that values an oppressed mother. One where the unconscious agreement is that mothers are inherently better at parenting because it comes naturally to them, and that becoming a mother is the most significant part of a woman's life, and the entirety of said responsibility is meant to fall on the shoulders of one singular person, the mother. And because of this ideology, which is seen around the world, mind you, women statistically are disproportionately burdened by childbearing compared to men, even in the modern day.
Something I struggle with so much in this season of motherhood, which is the early years, I have a 4-year-old, a almost 2-year-old, and a newborn, is how much I am needed all the time. It is so frustrating. It is so debilitating to almost feel like you are not your own person and like you don't matter. Your needs don't matter. Like We all know that you can't pour from an empty cup. But if you're a mom, especially with young children, you are literally not only required to pour from an empty cup, there's no other way around it. There's no way your cup is full. Even if you try to fill your cup, doesn't even get close. So you're not only required to pour from an empty cup to everybody, to every single one of your children, to your husband, you're also supposed to do it with a smile on your face all the time.
Research has consistently shown that parenting takes more of a toll on mothers, while studies have shown that fathers are taking on more of a parenting role with their children than in previous years and can experience stress and isolation. Multiple studies have shown the acute time pressures on mothers, particularly when it comes to the mental load. For instance, a 2022 Statistics Canada report estimated that women consistently take on a larger share of the unpaid household work, including childcare. Other studies have shown that mothers are emotionally exhausted and burnt out.
I was just listening to a podcast about the falling birth rates, and they were talking about why people are choosing not to have kids or why they're just having fewer kids. And a couple of things came up that I think we're all very familiar with, right? The rising cost of childcare, the fact that people can't afford housing, grocery prices, all of those things. And they also talked about like social media and the fact that just a lot of people aren't getting married or dating anymore. But I think they missed out on one key component that I actually think is a major factor for a lot of women who are just choosing not to have children with men. And that is the unequal division of labor between men and women, specifically when they have children. Because here's the thing, so many women will tell you, I had a great husband, I had a great career, I had a great life, and then I had kids. And then things became so unfair. I did all of the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry. I took care of the dog, I took care of the kids. I did all of the overnights, all the tubbies. I made every school lunch. I went to every school event. And my husband just went to work. And he was considered a good dad, and I was considered an okay mom. And every time I brought it up, people dismissed me.
And this is why we've seen such a push for authentic motherhood on social media over the past decade, because previously mothers have been forced to suffer in silence unless they want to be told that they're bad moms for complaining. And while I think that there's a thin line between sharing authentically about how hard motherhood is and bashing your kids and motherhood as a whole, I really believe that the movement is a net positive because it lifts the veil of this picturesque image of motherhood that we saw in the 1960s housewife. That, and finding out that most of those housewives were prescribed sedative drugs like Valium to get through the pressures of being a perfect housewife. The point being that women have been burdened by being the default parent for too long, so they don't want to make that sacrifice anymore. And it's gotten to the point where now we're seeing that men are actually wanting children more than women these days. Just over 1/5 of childless women aged 18 to 34, recently polled by Pew Research Center, said that they don't ever want to be parents, compared to the 15% of men. Conversely, 57% of men said that they'd want children someday, versus 45% of women. And like I said, this is something that we see around the world as the traditional mother role runs so deeply in many cultures. South Korea being one of the more glaring examples, where it has the lowest fertility rate in the world, just 0.2 in 2023. It's also a country where women do nearly 3 hours more of household chores a day than men do. And in comparison, we see in Sweden, they have only a 1-hour difference between women's household chores compared to men. And their fertility rates are significantly higher. Who would have thought that men helping out around the home would raise fertility rates? But the other side of this patriarchal coin is that choosing your career over becoming a stay-at-home mother doesn't necessarily lighten the load. It just changes the shape of it. Because even if both you and your husband work full-time jobs, the mother is still statistically taking on more of the mental load of parenthood.
If you were wondering how you're meant to work a 9 to 5 but do an 8:30 drop-off, a 3:30 pickup, also meal prep, laundry, cleaning, maintain a social life, start a side hustle, and have some semblance of sanity still, me too.
On top of that, working mothers face what's known as the motherhood penalty, a financial hit that can be substantial. In fact, mothers experience a 60% drop in income in the decade after their first child is born, compared to men. And some argue that parenthood is one of the biggest contributors to the gender pay gap, since women, even those who aren't planning on having children, are often perceived by employers as potential mothers, and their roles and career trajectories are adjusted accordingly.
What has been the hardest double standard you guys feel like you've had to overcome together?
Children. Always children. We'll have investors ask us all the time, well, what happens when you two go have babies? And I remember one time like crying about that. I called my mom and she was like, get up or get out the game, sis. I was like, Damn. But I think just like the assumption that, you know, in your career, if you're a woman and if an investor puts in money and you're going to be around for 10 years, that you're going to have kids and then you're going to fuck off.
And so it's no wonder we have people like Chapel Roan talking on podcasts about how she doesn't want kids because she doesn't see anyone in her life with children that's actually enjoying their life. Not because there aren't moms out there who enjoy motherhood, but because for a lot of women, the struggle is real. And if the only version of motherhood that Gen Z sees is either an exhausted momfluencer venting about how hard life is, or a trad wife acting like they've been lobotomized to get through their day with a smile, as would be in line with the 60s housewife they're trying to cosplay, then it's no wonder women are hesitant to have kids. So in response to women rebelling against the patriarchy and choosing to go childless, it seems governments are trying to remediate this problem by coming up with often the least helpful solutions. Recently, as mentioned, we had the US government suggesting a $5,000 bonus for every baby a woman has, and it was honestly quite offensive. In a country where giving birth in a hospital without complications, without surgeries, costs a minimum of $10,000 without insurance, $5,000 is a slap in the face.
The current administration having an issue with the declining birth rate in this country and offering $5,000 to women, mind you, a one-time payment of $5,000 to women to pop out kids, or like for them to pop out kids as an incentive, is evil. And I happily will contribute to the declining birth rate in this country.
And as a Canadian who has public health care, it's always crazy when I'm reminded that women have to pay to give birth. Like the fact that you have to budget that into your life, whether you can afford to have another kid based on the hospital bills, insanity. But this is the other thing that infuriates me, which is that it really took the risk of an economic collapse for rich politicians to give mothers the time of day and a bare minimum offer of support. As said here, the $5,000 baby bonus idea felt like a symbolic gesture in the face of a sinking reality.
Come on, have a baby. Come on. You want a rice cake? It's all yours. Start popping them out. Will this change your mind? And it's gonna both of them?
But a baby bonus is hardly a new concept in the world of falling birth rates. It's just extra offensive in a country where there's no maternity leave, no public health care, no affordable childcare, and a cost of living crisis. And on that note, I won't be getting into the cost of babies in this video because while it does play a big part in the decision to have kids, I did do a whole video on that about how millennials can't afford children, and I can link that below. But most developed countries have been struggling with sharp birth declines, and they've had baby bonuses for years trying to combat it. Finland pioneered the idea back in 1938 when the Nordic country started to offer low-income mothers the choice of either a cash benefit or a box with essential baby items, known as a maternity package. Australia provides new parents with payments of about $1,700 over the first 13 weeks, while Singapore spreads its baby bonus of roughly $8,000 over 6.5 years. Germany provides regular child stipends, about $275 per month, on top of its universal childcare system. Japan, meanwhile, combines a lump sum of baby bonus with monthly payments. The other problem with the baby bonus in the US, besides the fact that $5,000 makes no impact in the grand scale of motherhood, is the concern that it could reinforce traditional gender roles during a time of heightened gender inequality and social tensions. This is because they're not addressing the deeper social issues burdening mothers, but encouraging them to have babies and to be stuck at home, fending for themselves whether they want to or not, because they can't afford $5,000 a month in daycare. But the elephant in the room, at least for those who know things about baby bonuses, is that they don't really work. Like, yes, they have been shown to slightly increase births, but they won't fix a system that neglects and suppresses women. Studies from around the world show that in some cases, baby bonuses may just help slow the rate of fertility decline. A recent study found South Korea's total fertility rate would have been 4.7% lower in 2015 without its post-birth cash transfers. So without the supporting social systems that actually help mothers, beyond a buy one get one free hospital birth discount, it's not going to make a lick of a difference in the birth rate crisis. So why has the system failed mothers so drastically? It's a big question and a complicated question with a long history behind it, most of which we won't be covering, but I'll talk about the important parts. So one of the biggest problems is, of course, the lack of maternity leave for mothers. And to put it bluntly, as I've done before, I don't care that there's private insurance for some mothers or that in some states they allow 6 weeks off work. Every mother should have the right to minimum a full year off work to care and bond with their baby. Period. Like, that should be the standard. And with that, as of right now, despite America being one of the wealthiest nations, today only 21% of US workers have access to paid family leave through their employers. Even though, according to the Pew Research Center in 2015, both parents work full-time in almost half all two-parent families. To start, some of the complexities of how mothers got left behind include a strong identity of individualism that America holds. This value is one that stemmed from World War II and has also been a big reason for America's success. Post-World War II, the US doubled down on its individualist cultural mindset, particularly as its relationship with the Soviet Union deteriorated after the war. In the wake of this, strong antipathy to anything that might be labeled as socialist or worse, communist, made it much harder to build support for social welfare policies of universal benefit. Any kind of medical support for mothers or infants that often went along with paid maternity leave was cast as socialized medicine. But since then, there has been plenty of interest in giving mothers paid maternity leave. As we know, 82% of Americans support access to paid maternity leave. But despite all the benefits that come from maternity leave, like an increased paid labor force, greater economic output, and better social outcomes, they are still at ground zero. And this brings us to the second complication, which is that the government is so stunted that it's often impossible to make big changes. This is a concept I read about in the book Why Nothing Works, a very interesting read about how the government is held back from making real positive changes for its citizens, and I'm sure I'll be referring to this in future videos as well. But today I just want to talk about the broad concept that what's best for the people isn't always what gets pushed through the system. Because in the American political system, there are just too many roadblocks, too many hurdles to be cleared, and too many opportunities for proposals to get voided. The problem here is that there's a tension between reining in the government's control while still giving it the ability to get things done. Because no one wants an unregulated government that doesn't have anyone overseeing their actions, but when there are too many restrictions, the establishment is stuck and its hands are tied, unable to help the people it's serving. Progressives are so fearful of establishment abuse that reformers tend to prefer tightening the grip on the public authority to loosening the reins. The movement discounts whatever good government might do in service of ensuring it won't do bad, and that's driven well-intentioned reformers to insert so many checks into the system that government has been rendered incompetent. Public officials can't effectively fight climate change or address the nation's housing crisis or enhance the country's infrastructure because of strictures progressives themselves have installed to protect the public from abuse. And so we live in a system where even the smallest pushback from the public or politicians that disagree can avoid any positive change trying to be made.
I unfortunately understand the United States government in the sense that we are both not motivated by the idea of self-improvement. We're not motivated to do things just to make our lives better, to make us happier. That's not what gets us up in the morning. We are only motivated by spite and the chance to dunk on our haters. Which is why I think the only way to make any progress is to start a walkable city race with Russia.
The system has so many steps, checks, and choke points that it's easier to block progress than to build new safety nets, and maternity leave has repeatedly fallen victim to that reality. But it is a really complicated issue because we've seen what happens when governments go unregulated and the abuse of power that comes with it. So that's not the answer either. And I'm not about to pretend like I know the answer to this, but if the government can't supersede these hurdles, then nothing will change. And the other side of this that's so sad is that while 80% of Americans want maternity leave for moms, none of them want to actually pay for it. Americans are indeed hesitant when it comes to publicly funded programs. The same survey that showed 82% of Americans support paid parental leave also show only 47% support government funding for it. Everyone wants progress and improvement until the cost of that progress is someone stepping into their own backyard to make that happen.
Why is America so opposed to the idea of maternity leave? It's like we're allergic to it. Here we have a situation of a mother very upset the fact that she has to turn her twins over to daycare after 10, 12 weeks of maternity leave. And then you have idiots like this guy below with their hot takes that men should just make more money and provide for their women, when honestly, the simple solution is a government mandated maternity leave. It's a simple thing, but it blows my mind how that's not even in the discussion on this. It's blaming men, women marry better men, all this stuff, when there's such a simple solution and the rest of the world's figured it out, yet we in America cannot figure it out.
And we see this in that public polls show that the American people do not want federal government to fund a paid leave program, preferring that employers pay for it. But a paid leave mandate would increase the costs for employers and reduce overall employment. And this is something that makes me more sad than angry, but definitely a bit of both. Because, what are taxes for if not helping the people of your country? And I hear the arguments that our taxes have increased tenfold since the 1900s and that there's so much waste in government spending, but that doesn't mean that we don't fight for social systems to help our people when it's our moms, our sisters, and our daughters. Rant over. It just feels helpless when the government can't just implement maternity leave, at least long enough for people to realize the benefits of it and that it's worth it in the long run. But this is why we see so many handouts from the government, like the baby bonuses, because it's easier to push them through than actually create programs that support people long term. We even had this recently in Canada, where Trudeau wanted to give every Canadian $250 to help with the cost of living. And most people you asked were pissed about it because it does nothing to actually fix the problem. But despite that, we will continue to see handouts like this because it provides fast relief, has a low administration burden with no need for new departments, infrastructure, or policies, and it's only a short-term commitment. But I'll end off with this quote: "If we truly want government to be able to do great things, the solution is not to tie its hands further. It's to hold those in power accountable, and to do so without grinding public action to a halt." Well, hello there. Welcome to my editing corner for today's final thoughts. So I was just working on the edit of this video and realized that my final thoughts weren't really hitting. I think I didn't realize how negative this video might come across, negative towards motherhood. And I just feel like I need to say that motherhood isn't miserable for a lot of women. There's a reason why so many women have kids, and I just feel like I have to defend mothers. So many of us love it. I can't imagine my life without kids. Josh is the same. So it's not all bad. I also had this thought after the fact of is it really that big of a deal if birth rates are dropping when we have AI taking all our jobs, and it's unsustainable to have continuous growth in populations for the sake of the earth? That's not the solution either. So is it inevitable that birth rates would have to drop for the longevity of humankind? More questions at the end of a video. Isn't that what you love? But the other reason I wanted to hop on here after the fact is because I am coming out with merch, as you can see on my body, and there is something special about this, so hold on till the end when I can tell you that. But first I want to go through the pieces that I've made. My favorite is this hat. It says well informed and frightened because I feel like that's the essence of my channel. So it comes in this dark green and also black, which is somewhere. Let me find it. Here it is. It's a little dirty because Josh was wearing it. Yeah, I think it's just such a fun hat. And then I also have my shirt that says Embers Research Society, and also says it big on the back. And I thought it was a fun way to make this feel like a little club that we're in and make it sound kind of more serious than it is. And then finally, my matcha here is in my underpaid mug. I felt like this is very relevant to a lot of the topics we cover about how inflation and the economy has made everyone underpaid. But I also specifically have a special place in my heart for stay-at-home moms who want to use this mug. I thought that'd be funny, or for teachers, or just, anyone who feels like they're underpaid and are brave enough to display that at their work. So fun. But the reason I wanted to put this merch drop in this video specifically is because all the proceeds will be going to the SA Foundation, who directly supports women. The SA Foundation is an organization that provides a way out for women and their children from the sex trade. But the foundation does more than just providing a safe haven from being sexually exploited and trafficked. I don't know what I can say on YouTube, but it's a long-term recovery program so that women can actually re-enter society with skill sets and regain their independence. So if you would like to help support women in need and also rep the merch from your favorite YouTuber, I will link that in the description. Thank you so much in advance to anyone who makes a purchase. And that's all I have for today's video. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hey pores, listen up. We want you to start having way more children. Oh great, can't wait to hear how you're gonna make that happen. What we're thinking is a $5,000 cash baby bonus when you have a kid. It costs way more than that to give birth in this country. We literally just want healthcare. Shut up, commie!